Welcome to the June or the summer meeting, and it is truly summer. No question about that after yesterday and today. Just begin with some quick introductions for those of you that are not familiar with everyone. Chris Hauber to my right, Elaine Balchinian, Mark King, Bill Bruce, Harvey Alexander, Steve Rice, Mike Lyons, Rick Georgeson, John Brust, Don Sapos, and Larry Eckhaus. Thank you very much. I know, I stumbled, don't I hate it, no stumbling. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes from our March meeting? Is there any need for correction, revision, addition, or modification? Rick won't take it personally if you say yes. Okay. Hearing nothing, I'll accept a motion to accept the minutes.
Make motion.
Mike, second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the March minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Okay, they're adopted. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to offer any comments? No? Okay, great. We'll go right into the reports. I don't have anything specific to report on. Chris is going to report on the issue of board member appointments. That's the only thing that I really had on my radar at this point, because every one of the appointed board members are well past their appointed term. They're continuing in that term or past that term, but we are working with the governor's office, so I'll turn it over to Chris to talk about that, if there's anything he wants to talk about, or if there's any other commission members that have anything they want to bring up. Any commission members? Any commission members?
Okay, my report. So as far as board appointments go, had a conversation both with a legislative person in DEC in central office and a woman who runs these types of appointments out of the governor's office. And the reappointments did not go through by the end of session. Well, are not expected to go through by the end of session, which is today. The expectation is that, and the appointments office doesn't seem to have any issue with it, of course. It's just they're backlogged. So the point was made to me that if the Senate comes back into session in the fall, in September, if the governor calls them back, or if they have to come back in for any other business in the fall, which they often do, it may be brought forward then. So we just continue as we have currently. Okay.
If somebody brought up the point that we were all overdue and we didn't like something we passed, would they be able to try to get it avoided?
There's counsel. This is not counsel. My opinion is no. In conversations that we've had with other commissions that have appointed members, even though their term may have expired, they continue on until they're either reappointed or someone is appointed to replace them. Because the expectation is that the board needs to function, and to function you need a full board, which would include the 4 citizens. Is that fair, counsel?
Yeah, and I think we also mentioned that it's rare that motions are not passed by sufficient majority that it would be a problem. So,
Well, it might be a problem here because we're all overdue at this point.
yeah, no, I mean the total voting on any particular motion has always been, as long as I've been here, they've either been unanimous or we've been unanimous. So, if there were a problem with any particular members, the motion might still carry. But I think Chris is right that at least in practice, the members continue past the end of the term until they're either reappointed or replaced. And until anyone says otherwise, that's the practice for problem.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it really only affects the citizen members because
Correct.
the other members are
Ex officio.
Yes.
Yep, that's right. They're permanent by their virtue of office. This issue is part of our annual report that we have to provide through the Public Authorities Reporting Information System online, which is due the 30th of June. It probably will be a red flag that will come up that says that the appointments are expired. it's not a bad thing. It may help to move forward. I've got a number of other things just to go through. I think people, if you notice when you walked in, the new display, it's something that Jeff Fulmer, our new Discovery Center Director, and Wendy worked on. It's something that we bring to different events, one of which was the Rensselaer County Chamber, their annual meeting, annual dinner, about a month and a half ago. And it was referred to as one of the best there. You can see why, so it's nice. A couple other things. I wanted to introduce Dr. Steve Campbell. Steve, raise your hand, stand up. Steve is our new conservation biologist. He started with us, about a month and a half ago, Steve? Yeah. Okay. And he comes to us, he was just finishing up his postdoc work at the University of Arizona. And he's been spending his time looking at all of our, most recently, all of our past data for Carners, the monitoring data, and trying to come up with, to make sense of it all. And he's, as you imagine, a pretty well-experienced statistician. Much smarter than the executive director, of course. So, welcome, Steve.
Welcome, yeah.
And if people have questions, you know, we'll probably get done a little earlier this meeting. If you want to talk to Steve, you can ask him questions about some of the stuff he's been doing. H2H is the consultant firm that we contracted with to look into the hydrogeology. They gave a presentation to the technical committee about a month and a half ago. Their expectation is to have a draft report to us by early July, and then being able to provide a final report and a presentation at our September meeting. And then the plan would be is what are the next steps we want to take from there. And I wanted to mention Tyler Briggs. Tyler, raise your hand. Tyler Briggs is, this is his second year with us as a seasonal employee. He's worked on as a fire management seasonal employee. Tyler is now filling in, his new title is fire management technician. Brandon Clifford, who is our fire management specialist, had some personal issues, decided to move on about a week or two ago, and we asked Tyler if he would step in, since Tyler does know the fire program and he knows a lot of the partners. So Tyler decided to take that plunge, so he's going to be with us. And he's actually funded through a grant with the Forest Service, the National Fire Plan Grant, which I'll talk about when we get to budget, through the end of December. So that's good. And I also wanted to thank Tyler. We had an AmeriCorps crew here for 8 weeks? Yep. 8 weeks. And they gave us a picture. They represented us as volunteers along with our education staff at the Tulip Festival, left us a picture, and they sent us a nice note. And they got a lot of work done. It was lots of work, so thanks for that, Tyler. Let's see. Finally, I have, everybody has a copy of this. This is our first official fancy annual report. I want to thank Wendy for working with me and taking the lead for putting it together and designing it, and also thanks to Lisa for coming up with the numbers that we have. Our audited financials are in here. So it's a nice annual report, and this is something you can see. It's a really nice document. This is printed in-house. You can print it in-house. A machine staples it, so it really minimizes any cost. There's a couple of typos in this one.
You get an extra bagel if you find them.
You do. You get a discount in the Discovery Shop, 10% off. So, but thanks for your help with this, Wendy. This is a nice document.
Looks great.
And I think I just wanted to follow up just a couple more things in your update, the green update. I wanted to make sure that everybody took a chance to read it. There's a lot of things going on the staff have been working on this spring. From the Discovery Center to the education program, we just wrapped up our school programs for the year. Now we're moving into our summer programs. There's lots of science work going on, monitoring and research. You can see that under conservation science. Continue to work in the preserve with our stewardship activities, boundary posting, trail marking, new trail creation following the new recreation plan, well, new from the management plan of 2010. Continuing to implement that. Jesse Hoffman, I just wanted to mention, shout out, 3,100 pounds of lupin seed, or lupin raw pods collected, 1.5 tons. How many days? 5? 5 days. And he's got 2 techs here, Alyssa, Goody, and they helped with that. Actually, they probably did it, and he takes the credit. It's all right, like a good manager.
From you.
Wow, good thing I'm sitting down. Ouch. So,
Beyond the wingspan.
beyond the wingspan. So that's all I have for that. It is, that's a John Bruss comment. And I need to do the technical committee.
I was going to say, because I didn't see Neil here. Okay, so you're just going to roll right into the technical committee?
Yeah, so I'll just move into the technical committee update. Neil wasn't able to join us. His son is moving up, going at his moving up ceremony, going into junior high. The technical committee project report. There were 3 general projects between the March meeting and now, all of which were in already developed areas. So there's really no impact. Recommendations included things that we typically do, if they can landscape with native plants, which were actually proposed in the proposals to begin with, which is fantastic, and using the appropriate external lighting, which would be high pressure sodium lights so as not to attract nocturnal insects. The only other project that's ongoing, of course, is the landfill, which they continue to work on preparing the new cell for preparation for accepting trash. Of course, they're also continuing to work on the restoration project. What they're doing now is they're looking at some of the areas closer to Rapp Road as part of the restoration project, and it continues to move along in a positive manner. Neil works with them. He's there. He's on a conference call every week. He's out there at least once or twice a week working with the consultants of the city. So it continues to move in a positive direction. And that's all I had.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Neil. Next, we'll hear from Jeff talking about the Discovery Center.
Stand in the back. We have made various improvements to the buildings and grounds, most notably the sign. I hope you all noticed as you came in. It's half sign and half art. The sculpture, the metal sculptures, and complete with its box garden and native cultivars, which Jesse worked on. Shout out to Chris and Wendy and former director Mike Venuti, who did a terrific job making that happen. Again, with Wendy, we've been working on outreach efforts and really stepping up our new trade show display, which Chris mentioned, which is affectionately known as Godzilla because of its enormous size. When I first came here and I saw that we had this little pipsqueak pod that we used for displays, I said, this is not something that is reflective of the quality of the exhibits and the programs that we have here, and that doesn't provide the maximum exposure and really engages the public at a trade show. So now people come by our booth when we're doing these shows, which we'll be doing more of, and they will really notice, and they have been. And also I wanted to thank Erin, she worked on that, helping Wendy and I too. We have been doing a number of events. Some are, Chris mentioned a chamber event. We've been doing some chamber events. The Tulip Festival with 80,000 people. The annual Flower and Garden Show, and here, among others, but here at the Discovery Center, the Lupin Festival, which this year had record-breaking attendance. We were all excited about that. And the Friends of the Pine Bush and Farnsworth Middle School silent auction, which had over 230 people here. And we're also trying to step up, letting people know that we are available as a rental facility and for meetings. So out there in that world that you're in, if you could think of us when something's coming up. Media, we've been doing a little bit more of that, excuse me, as well. Radio Disney, WAMC. I made an appearance with Sarah Poggi. Thank you. What's the trouble with last names? And Box Turtle on Channel 13 WNYT Forum, and on Schenectady Today. I recently appeared on that, and a little tuning of the horn. They said it was one of the best shows they had out of 14 years. And then I got the same sort of compliment for Albany County Convention and Visitors Bureau. I had a tough time with that name. Which they featured us in their monthly forum online, which both of these are up on YouTube, and got a very nice compliment on that as well. So, and then the Guild of England Chamber of Commerce invited me as a community ambassador, one of 5 community ambassadors, to go to a Global Foundries forum. Education, working with Erin, is continuing outstanding programs with her team. The exploration station changes quarterly. We're working to try to do even more with that over time. Our internship program continues. The Pine Bush Pups, which is, I should refer to as the ever popular folks beating down the door Pine Bush Pups program, which goes through the summer and then through the year, but reduced in the winter and summer, and then we do one in the spring and one in the fall. Did I get that right? Thank you. We also have a plethora of spring and summer programs for the public and schools, and I just got news before coming in here that our school programs this year for spring were up by 22%, which is really terrific. And the Lucan Festival, which took a lot of energy from the education staff and others, and everyone participated in making that such a success. We're thinking about Smoky Bear Day coming in October, and that'll do it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Anthony with the financial report.
We'll go through 3 reports. We ended our year in March, so this report is one snapshot in April, so we have 1 month for the year.
These are the yellow in your packet, the light yellow.
Everybody ready? We'll begin the review with our first report, which is the financial statement, statement of financial activities, which is our net income statement. Under the revenue category, dues and contributions are up slightly due to an increase in activity. Government grants and contracts came in slightly lower than budget, and this is just an estimate based on our budget throughout the year. This is our DEC grant. Mitigation fees and investment income are both 0 for the month against a budget of 0. Lease revenue came right in on budget. Other revenue was slightly higher due to an increase in program fees and merchandise revenue. So our total revenue came in very close at 92% for the month. Under expenses category, personnel and fringe came right in on budget for the month. Travel and training was under budget just due to the timing of expenses versus budget. We had a conference that we budget for the year that we haven't attended yet. Contractual, communications, and occupation, the next 3 categories. These expenses are down. They came in about 75% of budget, slightly under, and this is just due to timing of budget and actual expenses incurred throughout the year. Supplies and equipment came in 53% of budget, under. We postponed buying computer equipment. We did not have a cash plan, so we're being conservative on our spending. Other expenses, this is slightly under due to the timing of invoices. This is our insurance, credit card fees, and bank fees. This is just timing coming in. So overall, our expenses came in lower than budget, which is good, at 89%, giving us a slightly higher net income than our budget at $14,000. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, moving on. The second report in your packet is our statement of net assets, our balance sheet. Under assets, our operating cash decreased slightly due to the timing of grant payments from DEC, and this is just the timing of incoming money from DEC versus expenses going out. Conservation and land reserves remained unchanged. Grants receivable, this is money due from DEC for our April expenses. Accounts receivable, this is money owed for the first quarter of mitigation, which was actually paid in May. Inventory remained unchanged for the month of April. Prepaid expenses are 0. Investments in capital assets, investments. We had a positive performance in investments in April. And we'll review that on the next sheet. Capital assets remained the same for April. So total assets decreased slightly, just due to the timing of our cash and our operating expenses. Under liabilities, accounts payable and accrued expenses decreased slightly due to the reduction of accounts payable, and this is just the money that we owe currently for invoices, so they came in less in April. Deferred revenue is 0, so total liabilities decreased just due to invoicing. Net assets, both investments in capital assets and reserved assets remained unchanged. Overall total assets increased slightly due to a positive net income and an increase in investments for April. Are there any questions on that? last report in your financial packet will be our investment summary, and this is just a snapshot for the month of April. The reserve fund is doing well with a 1.69% gain. And both the Discovery Center endowment and the endowment are running relatively even, coming in at less than 1% for the month. Overall, our investments had a positive performance with a gain of over $14,000 for the month of April. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay.
And Lisa's report provides a nice segue for Matt Lindeman, who's here from Wojcicki and Company to talk about the audit. Welcome, Matt.
Get up here.
And everybody should have a copy of the audit materials.
Do you know what order they were in, Chris, by any chance? That's okay. I just have to say, I love the format that the presenters get here to keep things moving along. Because when you stand, you tend to speak a lot quicker than if you're sitting down, you get a chance to get comfortable. So I thought that was just for me, though.
No.
Okay. My name is Matt Lindeman. I'm from the accounting firm Wojcicki and Company. We're about a 35 professional person staff firm over in East Greenbush, New York. And we came in to conduct the audit of the commission for the year ended March 31st, 2012. It was the fourth year that we've served as auditors here, so we are somewhat familiar with your organization now, having been here a few years. There's 3 reports in your that are a byproduct of our audit, and I'm just going to go through at kind of a very summary level each one of those reports and what's in them, and I'd be happy to take any questions. I know you had the information in advance. We came in middle of May. I think it was the week of May 14th. We spent about a week on site. We had 2 staff people here during the week. We had a manager and myself also present for the engagement. And as a result of that audit, we made a full presentation to the audit committee back on June 15th. So the reports that you have were fully vetted by management as well as the audit committee. The first report that I'll talk about quickly does not have it's not the financial statements, it's a report to the board of directors, which basically kind of outlines what our responsibility is in performing an audit. I always like to remind the board that our goal is our objective is to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. Okay? Reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. We do not look at every single transaction that runs through the commission. Also, boards are typically concerned about what we do with respect to internal controls and things of that nature. We are required to consider the internal control environment at the commission in determining how we're going to do our audit. And if we have recommendations related to that, we would report them to you as well. So that is really the report to the board. A couple other key things in this report. There is a header in here, difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We did not have any difficulties. Management staff were able to provide us with all the information we needed on a timely basis, accurate information. As far as making any adjustments to the numbers that were presented to us for audit, we only made one adjustment, which means that on a monthly basis, as you meet as a board and get financial information like Lisa just presented, we didn't come in here and change all the numbers at the end of the year. The numbers that were presented to us, with the exception of one minor adjustment, were accurate. We did not have any disagreements with management during the course of our audit. We had no contentious accounting issues or things we couldn't come to consensus on. And aside from that, there really were no other significant findings. And that's the report to the board. If there's any questions on that report, I'll take them. If not, I'm going to move right into the financial statements, which is kind of the meat of what we do. This is it's a pretty lengthy document. It's about 20 pages. I'm not, because I'm standing up and I'm not real comfortable, I'm not going to go through the entire 20 pages, but I will hit on just a couple of key things, kind of like Lisa did in her month-end presentation. We look at an entire year, so we audit transactions for the entire year, but we really focus on making sure that the assets and the liabilities at March 31st, 2012 are what management says they are. Pages 1 through 4 of this document is what's called management's discussion and analysis. Management prepares this after the audit, during the course of the audit, and if you really only had time to look at a couple pages in the report, I suggest looking at pages 1 through 4, because it really does give a nice summary of the year and where the commission stands at the end of the year. Right in the middle of page 1, the financial highlights. At March 31st, 2012, the total assets had increased over the year by approximately $156,000. Revenue exceeded expenses for the year in the amount of approximately $172,000. So there was, in the private sector world, you might call it, in an income statement, you had $172,000 in income. It's always good when your revenue exceeds your expenses. And the unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year, and that's basically, if you take the building aside, if you took all your cash, all your investments, and the other small assets you have, and paid off the liabilities that you had, what would you have left? And that's $4.7 million at the end of December, or excuse me, March 31st. Just moving along. One thing I'd like to point out is the financial statements and the footnotes and everything here, with the exception of really pages 5 and 6, belong to the commission. They're management's financial statements. They're the commission's financial statements. Page 5 and 6 is our report that we're putting on your financial statements. There is a lot of language in here, but I will tell you that the third paragraph on this report is what's called our opinion paragraph. And the commission received an unqualified opinion, or what's, in layman's terms, a clean opinion. It's really the best you can do. It's what you want. And basically what we're saying here in 6 paragraphs is that your financial statements that follow here are correct in all material respects. And a couple of the other paragraphs really speak to some of the management's discussion analysis and what our responsibility is, making sure that's correct. I did have to say, when I saw that annual report, I breathed a nice sigh of relief when I noticed that our numbers here matched what was in there, because I did not see that beforehand. So
that's because it was after your numbers came over.
Okay. Well, that was the first page I looked for when I got that. So everything in there did match what's in here. So you do have audited numbers there, and actually, just as a little aside, in the future, if you want to make reference to the audited financial statements, there is a way we can do that in that report. So, like I said, I hit kind of the highlights. I'm not going to go through this document page by page, but I think it is important to know that your revenues did exceed the expenditures over the course of the year by $172,000. Once you get into pages 11 through 17, those are the footnotes to your financial statements. And essentially what they do, they're promulgated by professional auditing standards, and they really give some more supplemental information to the actual numbers, the balance sheet and the income statement that precede that. The last page, or the compliance report, which is on pages 18 and 19, I just want to talk a little bit about. Whenever you perform an audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required, as I mentioned before, to consider the internal control structure and environment. And since the commission is operating as a public authority now, and even beforehand, we've always conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. We have to do a little extra work and a little extra testing related to internal controls over financial reporting and also on compliance. So This report here is basically what we call a clean opinion on those items as well. So there's nothing that we found in our testing that we felt there was no material noncompliance, anything that we had to report to you. So those are clean, kind of clean reports as well. And then the one thing I'll just point out real quickly on page 20 is there is some additional information related to your investments in that portfolio that is required by New York State, and that was not in your report the last couple of years, but it is this year. And basically what it does is it extracts certain key information out of the financial statements, puts it on one page for Office of the State Comptroller to look at. So that's the financial statements. I don't know if anyone has any questions. The last report I have is during the course of our audit, from time to time we come up with some recommendations or some ways that we might be able to help you strengthen your internal control structure or the control environment. In the past, we can't, like I said, this is our 4th year. So the first couple of years we came in, we had a few comments being new and a fresh set of eyes and things of that nature. All of the comments that we've made in the past, and I think this is very important that the board understands this, all of the comments that we've made in the past have been all of our recommendations have been implemented by Chris and now Lisa and the commission, and the board has actually had to take action on a few things, investment policies, capitalization policies, things of that nature, as a result of some of the comments we've had in the past. So we've had, in the past, we have had 4 or 5, even maybe 6 comments, and every year it seems to get less and less. This year we were really just down to 1 comment, and it was just about segregation and duties and how to put a little bit more control in place over how wire transfers are done at the organization. And my understanding is we've already cleared that comment out. So we really have no issues of internal control to report or anything like that. So I don't know if there's...
Does anybody have any questions?
Any other questions?
Or any comments from the audit committee?
Yeah, one comment from me. Now that we're a public authority, we're going to have perhaps another level of scrutiny. And it's good to see that the transition from Allison to Lisa has gone so well. And congratulations on that, because there's always a potential for a speed bump when that happens. As Matt told us the other day, that transition has gone very well. So congratulations.
Yep. Yeah, we were very happy with the way that went this year.
And I want to thank Matt and his firm for the really professional recommendations that they've made for us. I think it's strengthened us as an entity, and I think it's put us in good stead as we transition to public authority status. And likewise to Chris Hauver for taking those comments and implementing them so quickly. So I want to thank both of you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I made the comment to the audit committee that our staff, they really enjoy coming here to work because of the fact that the books and records are in good shape and the people are good to work with. And, so from our standpoint as well, it's a nice job for us to have. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. We've got a few action items that Chris will take us through.
Okay. First resolution that we have, action item A, in your packet is blue, light blue, and this is an update to our budget. The board passed an operating budget at our last meeting in March, and this is an update to that, and that draft follows the blue page, and I will point you just to what the changes are. The main change is the fact that we got a $100,000 grant from the Forest Service for the National Fire Plan, which I mentioned is helping support Tyler's time. It also is helping support some other staff time. It's a matching grant. It's actually a $200,000 project, so we match it with our budget, and then we get $100,000 back in. So that's offsetting some of the expenses. So that's at the very top under revenue, the very first number, federal grants, in the left-hand column under the budget is $100,000. And if you go nearly down to the bottom, you'll see right above total other expenses, you see land purchase. You see that on there? That's the property that we're moving forward on with acquiring. And based on recommendations from our auditors, that needs to be actually on our statement, so that's now incorporated. And those are the only changes. Is that right, Lisa? Didn't make any other changes, right?
Is there any discussion on action item A?
I just have a question, and I don't, you've got in terms of personnel, a pretty good bump there. I'm just wondering, is that because of delayed hiring, or is that because of new hiring? I don't, in terms of year-to-year increase.
The increase where it was from this year from last year?
Yeah. Or for the projected budget from last year in terms of personnel.
Well, there were some vacancies last year, one of which includes the Discovery Center director. So that's part of it. And then there were some other vacancies, including the position that Steve just filled. And it also includes there's two increases for staff. There's a 4% step increase. There's a 4% merit increase. And those only can be given, well, they have to be presented to the board if the governor approves them for MCs. So they're in there, they're just not a guarantee. That's the difference.
Any other discussion?
For a motion?
Move for acceptance.
Move action item
Thank you. I'll take that as a second. All in favor of adopting action item A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against, say nay. Okay. Action A is adopted unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. Next one, B. My favorite color, salmon pink. We try and do this every year, update our policies and procedures, and the updates to the policies and procedures follow that cover sheet. There's basically some changes to tick-borne diseases, the procurement process, which I'll get into in another resolution, some specific language about holidays, about designation. We don't designate floating holidays, the state does, and we follow suit. It was just written unclearly. And we added Tier 6 for Tier 6. Any new employees will be now Tier 6 employees as of April 1st this fiscal year. And the details for that. And then just some other language changes. We had a title of corporate controller, and we don't have a corporate controller. We have a director of finance and operations. So those are just the updates to that.
Is there any discussion on action item B?
I have a question, and I don't know how to go forward, but in terms of the prevention of tick-borne diseases, I think this is a significant issue for people working here. Mm-hmm. And the concern I have is we have a number of staff who are seasonal, temporary, folks that may not have doctors in the area. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's any way to...
We cover that. We cover that through workers' comp. Well, not even. No, I'll let you finish.
So my question didn't have to do with coverage. It had to do more with finding and seeking and locating, medical help. And I don't know if there's a streamlined path to, help people find that, or if there's a way that it needs to, if it has to be incorporated into a policy, or if it's something that's done, and I don't know how it's done.
You want to answer that, Lisa?
Sure. We actually do have that in place. We use occupational health, which is over on Western Avenue, 1971. Somebody gets a tick bite and they require medical attention, we send them there. And then we get a report from there, and that goes in their file, and they fill out a C3 for every incident.
Okay.
And then they do lab work and take care of usually one medicine if it's in.
Is that pay for that?
Is that something that should be in the policy, I guess?
Well, they can also go to their own doctor, so I don't know if we want to limit that to, that's kind of our first stop emergency clinic that's open all of the time for the people who are out of town.
Okay.
But we also allow people to go to their own doctor and cover a copay.
And
It varies a little bit, so I'm not quite.
And we do, as part of annual training, we have a person that comes in for prevention. Is that through workers' comp?
New York State Insurance Fund.
Oh, that's right, nice. Yeah. They come in and give a presentation on prevention of tick-borne, or tick bites, basically. And this year we added sun exposure, or heat exposure. So we have that to try and be preventive. The major change in this, Steve, is that if you look at it, we had the fact that you can't use permethrin or DEET or anything else in occupied habitat. We can't prohibit that. We can recommend that. It can't be. If the individual wants to, what we can do is, if the individual is concerned about that and they want to use permethrin on their clothing, and we can keep, if they're a seasonal employee that's actually monitoring butterflies in lupin patches, and they don't want to do that, leave them to the side. Trying to work with the individual. It's a big issue. Take it from the guy who had Lyme disease bad. He got it from Cape Cod, of all places.
Any further discussion of action item B?
And that also covers, like you said, seasonal employees that may be going back to school and then realize they have a bite once they've left.
Yeah, that's why the policy says you have to notify your supervisor if you have a tick bite, or anything. But because ticks are so prevalent, that's why we have specific policy. So you have to notify your supervisor, which then goes to the director of finance and operations.
What's your sense of the tick numbers this year? Neutral, bad, or better?
Yes, the field staff. Tick numbers higher this year? I'd say they're higher.
There are lots.
A lot of ticks. They're starting to drop down, aren't they now, with the heat? They usually start to drop down in June, and they taper until September. But people understand the reason why for the decline in the population of the white-footed mouse. It's a primary host for the ticks. So as that population drops, they look for new hosts, and we happen to be a big warm-blooded host.
Is there any work to increase the population of the mice?
No. And they're cyclic. They're cyclic, so they do this, like rabbits do. So they'll come back up. It's based on acorn crop,
Oh, right.
I think. Isn't it? It's acorn crop, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like I know. I do know. It's acorn crop.
Sounded good.
It sounded good. It is. It's acorn crop. Acorn crops are low, so mouse populations are low, so they'll come back up as acorn crops come up.
Could you put that on the board?
I was just going to say, I figured this was a really, boring resolution. It's a lot of just administrative stuff. It's good.
There will be a quiz at the end.
No, I'd rather have people be interested and pay attention. It's great. Anything else on that? No? Okay.
Okay, is there anyone that wants to move item B for a vote?
I make a motion.
Second? All in favor of adopting action item B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The action item B is adopted unanimously.
Okay, the next one, item C, purple, lilac. This is a simple change to our purchasing and procurement guidelines, which we adopted at the March meeting, and also is reflected in the policies and procedures. In the past, we were required any purchases or procurements between basically $15,000 and under $50,000 had to be advertised in the contract reporter, New York State contract reporter. I've been informed by the controller's office that that's no longer a requirement. So this is just going to change our policy to make it optional.
Is it no longer a requirement just for commissions?
No, it's everybody.
Everybody?
Yeah. They lowered the threshold, or they raised the threshold. And, of course, you're going to use a contract reporter if it's an avenue to be able to get more. But a lot of times you advertise a contract reporter for things just because you have to, and you won't get anything. You have to go to other. So.
Is there any discussion on item C? Anyone wish to move item C for a vote?
I'll do it.
Okay, second? Second. Okay. All in favor of adopting action item C, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, item C is adopted unanimously.
Okay, the next one, action item D, is an updated capitalization policy. We adopted a capitalization policy at the March meeting, and that was one of the recommendations of the auditors in the past. And then as we were going through the audit this year, they recommended that we update the one that we have so it's a little more detailed, but still even more broad. So it continues to be, we capitalize any fixed assets that has a useful life of 1 year or more, and it has to be worth $5,000 or more, has a value of $5,000 or more. But we came up with categories and depreciation periods that are more detailed. And an example will be under building improvements. Under the one that we passed in March, we had building improvements at 30 years. And a perfect example would be the access road that we just put in with a porous pavement. That's not a 30-year, it may be, but it probably is not a 30-year lifespan. It's probably more like, it could be 15, depending on usage. A flexi-pave, which is the material with a recycled rubber and aggregate that are between the planters, that's not going to be a 30-year life, I can't imagine. So we wanted to broaden it. So we added some other things too, like office furniture and fixtures, which we didn't have. So we just made it a little more broad and added more specificity based on their recommendations.
Is there any discussion on item D? Okay, anyone wants to move it for a vote?
Motion.
All in favor of adopting action item D, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, item D is adopted unanimously.
Okay. Action item E, the last, is a pink one in your packet. There's 3 specific documents that are associated with this, and these are all documents that we are required to adopt or pass resolutions for to be in compliance as a public authority. And these are the last things we need to do to be able to allow Lisa and I to do our reporting to get everything done by June 30th. So we will be fully compliant with the requirements of Public Authorities Reform Act of 2009. Even though we had a short period to do it, we're going to get it done. So the first one is an assessment of internal controls that follows the pink page. The important thing is at the very bottom of certification. So it certifies that we followed a process for internal control structure and policies. And that's basically coming out of the audit that Matt just talked about. And this has to be, we have to make this statement every year. It has to be passed every year, and it needs to be posted on our website and uploaded into also another report. The second one is a prompt policy statement. And this is based out of a specific section of the Public Authorities Law that basically says that any vendor, any contractor that we work with, we have to pay within 30 calendar days. And that's more or less what the statement says. And we do that. We pay vendors within a week and a half. And I know you guys are laughing because the state doesn't do that. The state does not pay within 30 calendar days. Public authorities are required to do so, and we do that now. So that's the policy statement. So if we like that, then we follow with our annual report that says, for the fiscal year ending March 31st of 2012, our prompt policy statement, we followed it, and we paid all of our contractors, all of our vendors, within 30 days after receiving an invoice from them. And then finally is the summary of financial information. This is, you've heard me mention Paris, or the Public Authorities Reporting Information System, which both Bill and Don are familiar with other local authorities that they're involved with. This is what a printout from Paris looks like. This is just the summary of the financial information that's in the annual report. If you're curious at all, if you look on the top left-hand side, where it starts with governance information, and it goes all the way down to annual report submittal, that's all the information that has to be input in the annual report. The only thing the board has to pass is a summary of financial information by law. The summary of the financial information is reflective of the audited financials that we just looked at. So those are the four remaining documents that we need to adopt as part of action item E to be able to be in compliance with the Health Authorities Reform Act of 2009.
Is there any discussion on action item E?
I'm happy to answer any questions people might have about the reporting that we're going to be doing or otherwise.
Well, I have a question on the policy statement. For example, you get an invoice for payment.
Yep.
Say it's for services that were rendered.
Yep.
If the services are deemed to be not per spec or not
If inadequate?
or inadequate, exactly. Are you then still required to pay them and then?
No. No. Based on service performed.
Okay.
You know, and there's the two examples would be if it's a contract, so our contract would specifically say that. If it's a vendor, what would the vendor be? Staples. Staples delivers something, well, here's an example. Where's Marty? Paper shredder. They delivered a broken paper shredder. So we told them, actually it was, here's who it was. It was an office vendor. They delivered a broken paper shredder. She called them, they sent us a new one. But if they didn't, we wouldn't pay for that shredder. We wouldn't have to because it's not appropriate or valid service. Sure.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, we'll accept the motion to move item E for a vote.
Move that.
Second. Thank you. All in favor of adopting action item E, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Item E is adopted unanimously.
We got to pass minutes.
Okay. Yeah, we need to move into an executive session for what, 10 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
To review the minutes from the last session, review them, approve them if acceptable, move out, and that's it. That's all we have to do. And we need a motion to go into executive session, or to close out and then move in.
I'll move to close the meeting.
Okay. All in favor of going into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. We're now in executive session. We're out of executive session, so the last remaining thing on our agenda is to consider future meetings. And we've got 3 identified on our agenda. Next one being in September 20th, then December 20th, and then next March 21st. And I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
An hour early.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.